Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is the Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call for February 1st, 2022. My name is Brian T. Jackett. I will be your host for today. Got a great set of topics that we'll be covering today. First, though, we'll start off with our updates, news, announcements, other kind of things that we'll cover just for all those folks who are new or folks who want to see some different information we have. Then we've got our group photo time. Awesome for us to all get together as a community, be able to see each other, do our little waving hands. And then we've got 3 demos today. We've got Dan talking about using the user's calendar events with an ASP.NET Core application using Microsoft Graph. Also, Mitchell will join us in to talk to us the latest on Microsoft Bookings API on Microsoft Graph. And then lastly, Seb will cap things off with our Microsoft Graph Toolkit, talking about the task components and building those into your solutions. Now, again, for anyone who is new to our community, we like to cover a couple of different areas in terms of resources, things that you can get involved in. We have 2 of our developer sections on here. The first one for our Microsoft 365 developer videos at aka.ms/m365dev YouTube. This is where all of our various different information you can find for being able to work with our APIs, be able to see solutions and so forth. Lots of great content out there. We also have our community videos where things like our community calls such as this, those get put out in there. So you can go and see all the past recordings and be able to join in and see what was talked about in previous calls. That's at aka.ms/m365pmp/videos. We also have a lot of different open source initiatives available to you, whether you want to be able to go and get into different frameworks, be able to submit issues, be able to take a look and see discussion-wise what's going on, as well as our sample galleries. It's great to be able to see demos and other kind of things in our community calls. You can also go and actually take a look and see what is the community provided, what are different ways that I can be able to work with Teams, SharePoint framework, and lots of other areas. So great way to be able to dive in and actually see those examples directly in your own solutions, whether it's a dev tenant or other areas. And as always, if you want to find the one-stop shop where you can find all the different URLs, all the different invites, and other announcements for you, feel free to go take a look at aka.ms/m365pmp, where you can find all the different information that you'll need. Now, in case you don't have your own sandbox environment to be able to work with these different solutions, with the galleries and so forth, we do offer the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. This is a free tenant that will be provided to you. It'll work for 90 days, and then as long as you continue to use it, it'll self-renew. Great way to be able to have that E5 licenses, so you can get really kind of full access to all the different solutions and other areas that you may need to get. And as we've mentioned in previous calls, this does now have the instant availability. So no more hitting the go button, going to get some coffee or tea, come back hours later. Now you actually have that tenant available to you very, very quickly. Also, in terms of learning material, we have a lot of great different training modules, different courses, and other things you can take a look at out at aka.ms/m365/dev/learn. Lots of great content here. This is all free material for you. So if you're looking to ramp up, if you're looking to kind of increase your skills in certain areas, a lot of great content out there. Please feel free to take a look through the different materials that we have available to it. And as we've mentioned in the past, we do have our samples gallery. Again, it's great to be able to see demos and other kind of things here on the calls. What if you actually want to go and play with it yourselves? We're now over 880, I believe it was 889 this morning when I last looked at this. A lot of great samples out here across a lot of different frameworks, different solutions, different kind of technology areas. Please feel free to take a look at aka.ms/m365/samples. And with your help, very soon we'll cross that 900 threshold. So we look forward to your contributions out there. And we'll turn things over to David to talk a little bit about our Sharing is Caring initiative.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, friends, as you may know, this is an open source community, and we want you to be involved, whether that means you're utilizing the resources available to you or contributing back. We'd love you to do both. But we understand there are many hurdles that may prevent you from getting involved as much as you'd like to. Things like, how do I submit my first pull request? Or I would love to provide a presentation on an upcoming community call, but I'm a little nervous. These sessions are live hands-on guidance sessions that will provide you how to accomplish a number of things, like that pull request, how to submit to the Power Platform sample gallery, a number of topics. They're all safe space opportunities. You're going to meet with members of the PNP team and other MVPs, other members in the community, and we're going to work together to achieve the topic for that particular session. They're all absolutely free. They're scheduled all throughout the month and open for you to register for. So we invite you to register for them. And of course, our ever popular AMAs, 2 of which are coming up on React controls and Graph and MGT. So don't hesitate. Those are great opportunities to collaborate with the maintainers of those initiatives live, an opportunity to ask questions, collaborate, have fun. We are one big community, so we want to get everyone involved. aka.ms/sharing is caring. Brian, back to you.
Thank you so much, David. We also have a couple of different video series and podcasts you can take a look at to get the latest and greatest with different things that are going on in the Microsoft 365 developer community. First one being our M365 developer podcast with our very own Jeremy Thake and Paul Schaeflein. They do interviews, they talk about news, other kind of things that are up and coming within the developer ecosystem. Feel free to take a look at m365devpodcast.com. Go and find the latest news and episodes out there on that. And we also have our Microsoft 365 PMP Weekly, a series of different announcements, interviews. You usually have guest folks on there. Great way to kind of get and see what people are working on, different announcements and other things. Great community. Feel free to take a look at our video series at aka.ms/PMP Weekly and the podcast pmpweekly.podbean.com. Our very own Vesa and Waldeck going through a lot of different great content. And again, lots of guests that join in with them as well. Now, we've got a number of different news items, announcements that have come out in the recent days on here. We'll kind of group these together based on what the topical area was for this. Out on the M365 developer blog, we had 2 posts available talking a little bit about Microsoft Graph Data Connect. If you're not familiar with this is a way to be able to go and get bulk data out of Microsoft Graph rather than kind of transactional one-off kind of information. And so our very own Nick Charlebois was talking about different ways you can be able to work with the data and get different types of analytics with the data coming out of Microsoft Graph Data Connect. So feel free to take a look at the series on these. We also have some updates in terms of the SharePoint framework. We have a new release out there, so lots of great information to go and take a look into in terms of what is supported with this, the other updates that are being released with this. And also we have some updates to one of our JavaScript frameworks. So being able to work with additional data in terms of Outlook and be able to work with different properties. So just some updates in terms of the deprecation and what's available with those. So feel free to take a look at those announcements for more information on those. And flipping over to the team side of the house, we had a couple of other announcements out there. There is a great blog post that came out this week in terms of the what's new with the Microsoft Teams environment. So take a look and see. That's kind of a summation of a lot of different posts that came before this. So good to give you kind of a broad view of what happened in January and all the different kind of things that have released from this, from either from a platform perspective, from the different APIs that are available through also to the Teams rooms. There's some updates out there as well. So lots of good information. There's also another big announcement on here, which was that now we could actually have crosstalk between folks who are using a work or school account to folks who are actually using a personal account. So now we're starting to kind of break down those barriers between, instead of just going from work tenant to work tenant, we can actually now go to personal tenants as well. So there's more support coming from this. This is that kind of connected spaces, get the exact name for it, connected chat, I think it was. So being able to break down that barrier between those, and there's going to be more support as we go further into this. So take a look at those blog posts, great information out there. And then there's also some more deeper information related to Teams. If you're looking for performance, for analytics, for usage reports, and so forth, got some updates just in terms of what's available for administrators and understanding configuration, other kind of things within your tenant, as well as some updates to the Teams rooms. There's some information that we're releasing in terms of new devices, new different software, other ways you can incorporate this into your devices and the rooms that you may have at your office, at your home office, other kind of areas you're working with. So please people take a look. We got a lot of different blogs, a lot of information this past week. So please take a look, see what you can find out there. And at this point, we'll turn it over to our picture time. So again, feel free to take Seb as our wonderful example of how to wave and kind of shimmy back and forth. If you'd like to turn on your video cameras, and I believe Vesa will capture a quick little snippet for us.
Yep, we are already recording. Let's wait for the fill in of the room. I can see a guitar on the third floor up, row up. That's really good. Somebody's playing music. We still have a few seats left. Then I guess we are filled. And thank you, Dot, on the background.
Like a little.
Really good. So let's do some hand waving, everybody. Thanks everybody for joining again. One more time, awesome to have you on this course, and thank you for your absolutely invaluable feedback related on our platform. Thank you. Absolutely brilliant. Excellent. Thank you for that. We'll grab a GIF animation and include it in the blog post related on the recording. And Brian, back to you.
We'll go back to our slides real quick. All right, and at this point, we'll turn over to our first presenter. Dan will be talking a little bit about using users' calendar events, calling the Microsoft Graph APIs using the ASP.NET Core application. Dan, the floor is yours.
All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, folks. Well, I'm glad to be back here with you again. I was here, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and talked about Microsoft Graph and accessing email. We're going to do actually the same exact thing this time. So if you were here 2 weeks ago, you'll get a nice somewhat review. But if you weren't here, I'm going to start from scratch, assume you haven't done this before, and kind of walk you through this process. So the general idea is that with Microsoft Graph, we can tie all kinds of organizational data into our apps, of course. So for example, we could tie in email. That was one thing I talked about 2 weeks ago. We could tie into Teams conversations, files from OneDrive, and more. In fact, there's going to be a Microsoft Learn module that I'm going to introduce you to about that as well. But we're going to focus on calendar events. You know, how many times have you gone to set up something, like you're in an app, working with a customer, whatever it may be, and then you have to go run off to your calendar because you're pretty sure you had talked about a particular topic with someone, but you can't remember when it was, who it was. You just know it was a related customer. Now, in addition to that, we can tie into device information, security, tasks, groups, users, and way, way, way more. In fact, I'll have a quick intro to this if you're brand new in just a moment. Now, let's assume then that you have an app and you're going to authenticate your users. I showed something like this last time, 2 weeks ago. Once we've authenticated the user, we can request very specific permissions, such as I want to get to a user's email, or I want to get to their calendar events, or something along those lines. And we can do that by requesting an access token. And I kind of like to think of it as a specialized key that only fits in certain doors. And we can then take that key and pass it to Microsoft Graph and then get things like calendar events. Now, everything I'm going to be covering in this short 15-minute session here in demo can be found in a Microsoft Learn module. So last time I mentioned, we talked about email. So if you want to learn about that, you'll find it in the same general location here. This particular link at the bottom, this will take you right to the calendar events one that we're going to be covering here. And there's also a third one on accessing OneDrive files. So if you want to do that, you could certainly tie that in as well. Now, the reason, again, we're doing this is really to avoid a couple things. To avoid user context switching, jumping out of the custom app you've built to email or some other location to find a calendar event in this case, but also just to pull in data that might be relevant for your app. And that's really what this is all about, is pulling in that organizational intelligence and data into apps so that users can get everything they need. And it's not just a database app. It also lets them leverage what they've already stored somewhere else in the org. Now, to do this, you need to create a .NET Core app. Now, you could do that in Visual Studio again, or you could use the .NET CLI if you prefer. And then you need to register your app in Azure Active Directory. Now, last time I also mentioned the same thing. The Learn module, the link I just showed a minute earlier, it's going to have step-by-step guidance on how you can register your app with Azure Active Directory, even if you're brand new to this. It's actually very straightforward. We walk you through screenshots and what to click on and what to put in and kind of explain it along the way. So you don't need to memorize any of that, actually. It'll walk you through it. Now, what we're going to spend most of the rest of today on is we're going to talk a little bit about middleware in .NET Core. We're going to talk about a custom graph calendar client class, how we can inject it, and then ultimately how we can render events. Now, in order to do this, though, we need some code, and I'm going to see where my PowerPoint moved it to. So let me switch this around real quick. So when you go to the Microsoft Learn module, there's going to be a GitHub repo that you can clone. And you're going to notice that there's a begin and an end solution. Now, I'm going to work with the end solution here, mainly because I don't have a ton of time. But one of the things I want to point out before we get going is I talked about that specialized kind of key or access token, as we call it. And that has the rights to do certain things. Now, in this particular app, it covers 3 Learn modules. So we can get to the user's profile and read it. We can get to the user's presence and read it, undo that. We can get to the mailbox settings and read those. We're going to do that to get to some time zone settings for calendar events. We can read their mail, their calendars, and then on files, if you go through that Learn module, it'll show you how to not only download files, but also upload files. So we can do read-write in that case. Now, we're going to focus mainly right here, calendars.read. Now, before I show you that, let me go ahead and let me start this up. You can see all my previous commands, which is not what I wanted. And we'll give this just a sec to build. But before that well, it's already done, but I'm going to show you one more thing in case you're brand new to this. Now, I'm already where I want, but it's quick to get back. If you haven't been to Microsoft Graph Explorer, it is a phenomenal tool. So you can go to aka.ms/ge, aka.ms/ge. And then on the left here, I'm just going to type calendar. And you'll notice several things come up. I could find a meeting time, schedule. I can do all this fun stuff. Now, I'm not currently logged in, but as Brian mentioned a little bit earlier, you can go get a free Microsoft 365 developer tenant, and then you could log in with one of the users that you'll get in that tenant. And that's actually what I'm going to do for the demo in a moment. But I'm not going to sign in this case because I just want to show you the basics. So if we go to my events for the next week, notice down here at the bottom, it pulled back a bunch of JSON data. And this is my anonymous, in this case, calendar events. Now, the part I want to call out is right here. Notice we're going to me/calendar view. That's one of the API calls. It's a RESTful API you can see that you can call. And in fact, if you click on this little I here, you can even learn more about what you can do with calendar view. Now, I only want to get for the next week, though. So notice that it plugged in a start date time and an end date time. And we're going to do something similar in the code demo I'm going to run. And then, of course, you can click on Run Query. Now, you can do this with all of these. Now, some of these right now, like I can't find a meeting time or schedule because I'm not logged in. But if I were to log in, I could do everything. Very powerful tool if you haven't seen it. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is actually run the app. And it runs on localhost 5001. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, this is one of my free Microsoft 365 developer tenant accounts I'm going to use. So like I said, you can sign up for one of these. We'll click on it. I'm going to go ahead and log in really quick here. And I have two-factor on. Put that in. All right, now this will take me to the home page, and I'm just in a temporary browser here. And notice it says, welcome, Dan. Well, that just made a call to /me. I talked about this a little bit last time, but it basically gets the user's profile. And then I also made a call to get the user's presence. Right now, in my kind of fake account, it hasn't seen me in Teams for a while, so it thinks I'm not available. But notice up top, I can go to email. We covered this last time. But I could also go to calendar. Now, I only have one event in there, and that was to give the presentation this morning. But if we went off to, teams.microsoft.com, I could go there, add a new event, and then I'm going to show you how we can display these events and get these events. All right, so that's kind of what the app does. Now, let's go on back now that we've seen that, and let's talk about how this kind of works from the flow that I showed earlier. So notice the calendars.read. What'll happen is you're going to have middleware, and this will do all the heavy lifting for authenticating the user, getting the access token, making sure you can call Microsoft Graph, all those fun things. And that's done in configure services. Now, while I'm focusing on .NET Core here, keep in mind that all these same concepts can be done with many different languages and frameworks. We just chose to focus on this Learn module in this case. But what this line here does is it goes into that app settings and it grabs these scopes. These are the permissions in essence that I need. And it's going to use those in a moment. But this is really the big part here. We're going to add authentication. Okay, and these are extension methods, they're called in C#. We're going to add Microsoft Identity Web App. You saw me just use that actually to log in and things. And we're going to enable token acquisition to call a downstream API. What's a downstream API? Well, in this case, once I log in and then I request a access token, I can then use that key again to call Microsoft Graph. Well, that's the downstream API. So we're basically with just like 3 lines of code, and there's a little bit more you'll see right here, but 3 main lines of code, we're enabling authentication and all the fun to make this possible to call Microsoft Graph. Not too bad. And if you're new to this, I mentioned this last time probably, it's not something I actually write that much because once you put it in the app, it's there. and it works, so you just leave it. So you can just borrow from your own code if you'd like and do that type of thing. Now, we also add Microsoft Graph. This is going to grab those scope permissions and the URL to call. Again, that calls into here. There's our downstream API. There's our graph call. And then we're going to do in-memory token caching. There's a couple options there. Now, the rest of this is really just making it where every page in this Razor app is authenticated. So you do have to be authenticated to get to any page, and that's kind of what the rest of this does. Now, the final piece I want to show you, I'm going to skip past some bonus code, is notice these two right here. We're going to have the ability to inject a graph profile client and a graph calendar client, and that's the one I'm going to jump to now. So if you've done this before with .NET Core, you probably know all about dependency injection. That's all we're doing here, is setting that up. Now, this is where the fun starts, though. You got to get the middleware registered properly, but then you can start making the graph calls. You'll notice over here to the left, I have a graph folder, and I have a calendar client, an email client, a files client. So I've kind of broken this up by single responsibility, if you will. But what we're going to do is inject into the constructor of this graph client, calendar client, a logger, and then this is the big important one, a graph service client. Now, what is that? Well, that came from some NuGet packages. And so if we went into our CS proj file, you're going to notice I have some Microsoft Identity assemblies or NuGet packages, but I also have a Microsoft Graph one. That's important because inside of that, it has a graph service client. And think of this as really the doorway to make these Microsoft Graph calls. So we're going to inject that into here. And then I'm going to have a get events. Now, events are always a little bit tricky because there's time zones. So also a time zone could be passed in. We can get that through Microsoft Graph as well, so that we can make sure we're getting the proper events for the user's time zone. So that's why this is being passed in. Now, from there, what we're going to do is a little bit of filtering. So notice we have a start of the week and end of the week. So from today, 7 days out. And then what we're going to do is feed that into what's called a query option. It's the view settings for the query, kind of like our where clauses, if you will. So notice we add in the start date time and the end date time, and these are the properties that we want to basically filter on. Now, once we've set today and a week from today, then we can actually make the call. Now, remember I showed you earlier, it was /me/calendar view. Well, by using the Microsoft Graph .NET Core SDK, we can actually call into our Graph Service Client and treat this as a dynamic API that we can call into, a chained API, I should say. So we're going to say, go to the user, logged in user's profile, but I don't want to get just the profile. I want to get their calendar view. And then I'm going to filter the request based on the start and end date. So we're going to pass those view options in. Now I'm also passing in a header for the user's time zone. So we make sure we get the right ones. And you might have noticed when I was back here in Graph Explorer, there's a lot of properties that get passed back by default. I may not want all those. So I can project or select exactly what I want, and that's what we're doing right here. I'm going to grab the subject, the organizer, the start, and the end date. Now that means that it'll really minimize the amount of data sent over the wire, which is always a good thing. You only want to retrieve what you actually need. Now, in addition to that, we have an order by. We're going to order by start, date, time. Now, start, date, time is actually, in this case, it's a nested property. If you go back and look at the JSON, and this is how we can get to it. And then we're going to do this asynchronously. All right, now that's not too bad. I mean, if you're new to this, you may have never done it before, but once you have this Graph Service Client injected in a .NET Core app, and you have your middleware set up, now it's just a matter of learning the API, and you'll get nice IntelliSense and code help and stuff like that in VS Code and Visual Studio and other editors. Now, the final piece is we need to now use this Graph Calendar Client. So I mentioned earlier, it's registered in the configuration, and that means it's injectable. Now, notice that we have a Graph Profile Client in my calendar page here and a Graph Calendar Client. These are both injected. So now the last part is I'm going to get the user's time zone. All right, we're going to do that by making a separate call to get the user's mailbox settings. And then this is the call we just looked at. We're going to call into the calendar client, get the events, and then I'm going to pass their time zone in. And from there, we get back, we hope, some events. Now, at this point, if you've done Razor syntax at all with MVC or Razor pages, you know the rest of this. We're going to check if the user's authenticated. If they are, do we have any calendar events? And if we do, let's loop through the calendar events. And then the rest of this just writes out the subject and the start and things like that. And that's really what you saw right there. Right? And if I had more calendar events, of course, it would just keep looping through those. All right, so that is an example of how we can get started. So to kind of wrap this up, if you would like to get more information about this, you can go to the link that you see on your screen here. And I would encourage you to not just think in terms of, calendar events. You may say, I don't need calendar events. I need this, this, and this. Again, this could be Teams chats, it could be calendar events, it could be email, it could be files, and the list just is huge of what you could pull in. Trending documents, all kinds of fun. What's so great about this is you bring the data where the user works every day, you avoid the context shifts, and it's very secure with Microsoft Identity. So I'd encourage you to go through the Learn module, and I'm out of time, so I'm going to turn it back over here. Thanks a lot for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dan. Really great demo, and where you can get some comments that people appreciate the handling like time zones and other things that may not come up very frequently. So good to see that kind of well-rounded. How do you encapsulate the entire solution, not just a point, get one data thing in there.
Awesome. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dan. Next, we'll turn things over to Ultimish to talk a little bit about the Microsoft Bookings APIs on Microsoft Graph. Ultimish, the floor is yours.
Hey, everyone. So I believe this is the first time I'm presenting about bookings. So I would like to first go through what bookings is and introduce bookings and Bookings Graph API to the community. So what is bookings exactly? Bookings is an appointment scheduling software which provides you an efficient way of connecting with your stakeholders. To simplify it further, it allows you to publish your calendar to the outside world. So any stakeholder, be it your customer or anyone else, can book an appointment efficiently with you. Now, it takes it a step further. It's not just appointment with you, but you and your team as well. So there are a lot of business logics and external customers, external stakeholders, even internal stakeholders can book appointment with you and your team using this solution. Now, it's used by both enterprises and small businesses. A business can offer multiple services and can be served by many staff members, as I told you. Like, for example, let's take a salon or a spa. So it can offer services like a haircut or a facial and many other things, right? So you can configure the same in your calendar and people can book an appointment for each of your services. It is also seamlessly integrated with the Outlook calendars of staff members. So for example, if you are a staff member in bookings, your calendar, like when you're busy and when you're free, all these things are taken into account before the appointment is scheduled. One of the great features which it has is that it's integrated with Teams for online meetings. So I can book an appointment for a visit to your location, or we can just have an online meeting using Teams. It is secure and compliant. It inherits the policies of Exchange mailboxes. The uses of bookings are manifold, and I wanted to introduce you to the many use cases which we have across industries. One of the key sectors is education. In education, a lot of use cases are there. For example, students can book one-on-one appointment with their professors. It's also used by many universities where staff members and the teachers connect with parents. It is used for students to connect with career counselors. One of the very interesting use cases of bookings is that you cannot just book appointments with human beings or staff members. You can in fact book appointments with any resource which has a mailbox. One of our customers in fact uses bookings so that people can book company cars. Healthcare is another prominent sector, and it grew manifold during the pandemic because it allowed people to book virtual consultation through bookings. It's not just virtual consultations, any kind of tests, procedures can be booked using Microsoft Bookings. Government is also, the use cases across governments are also huge. As you can see over here, it was even used by interesting things like police to connect with citizens. It's used across finance and retail as well. In retail, one of the interesting use cases was that people were booking appointment with personal shoppers, like customers can, have an appointment scheduled with one of the personal shoppers in the store, and they can visit the store and get a personalized experience. There are a lot of generic use cases as well. For example, within an organization, a lot of senior members like CXOs and all open their calendars so that people can have office hours with them. It's also used for sales use cases where sales people in the sales organization connect with sales leads. Webinars are also a common use cases where more than one person can join an appointment. Internal connect with tech supports, recruitment are other significant use cases. Finance was another key sector. It's just like healthcare where you're booking an appointment with some expert to provide you a service. Now, how are APIs typically used? So bookings graph APIs in beta have been there for about 3 years now, and we have multiple use cases. Some of them which I'm highlighting over here. So one of our top healthcare customer, what it does is it has an existing EHR system, and it uses the booking APIs to create a custom solution which is within their EHR system. So they don't want their staff to go outside the EHR system, so they have used bookings APIs for this. Another customer uses it for a very interesting use case. So typically when the appointments are created in bookings, they appear in a calendar-like view. But this customer, what they did was that they had a queue view instead of a typical calendar view, which was more convenient to their staff members to operate on. Integration with other systems is another important use case. So basically, bookings data can be synced with Salesforce and Dynamics and other CRM solutions. So typically what happens in bookings, you are actually often connecting with customers or potential leads, and you would want them to be in your CRM solutions as well. So one can use APIs to sync the data to these systems. Many people also use bookings so that they can integrate it within their workflows. So for example, a solution which offers customer care has integrated a custom tool made using bookings APIs in their workflow. So it's a customer care solution, and their customer care solution has many steps. In one of the steps, they have used booking APIs to create a custom solution. Another important use case is that it is used for automating admin setups. So basically, the booking calendars has a lot of settings. I will walk you through all the entities which are there, and each of these entities has a lot of administrator settings around it. And sometimes an organization can have many calendars, hundreds of calendars, and they don't want to do it manually, so they will just use the APIs to automate the entire setup process. So let me actually walk you through how the bookings is structured. So there are like 5 key entities in bookings. The most important and the top level object is the business object. So the business object contains all the business information of your organization. It can contain things like what your business website is, what are your policies, what are your working hours. It can also have some compliance related information over there. So the business is the top level object, and it kind of defines your business. For example, a salon is a business, or a healthcare clinic is a business. Now, each of these businesses can provide various services. And in the beginning of my presentation, I took the example of a salon, which is providing services like haircut or a facial or some other thing. So every business can have a lot of services. Healthcare can have, say, a one-on-one consultation or some kind of procedure, say COVID testing. So these all will be services. Now, this service objects represents the information which is provided by the service. It also consists of important details like who are the staff members in your organization who are providing the service, what are the working hours of the service, what is the communication which will go from the service to your customers. For example, there'll be a confirmation mail, and you can configure multiple reminders mail. You can also configure SMS if you so want. Now, the third key entity is customer. Now, customer here is a generic term. For your booking calendar, any stakeholder who's actually booking an appointment for you, who's actually requesting a service from you is a customer. In the case of healthcare industry, a patient will be a customer. In the case of education, a student is a customer. So customer is the third key entity of bookings. And every time someone comes and creates a booking appointment with you, that person is also stored as a customer object. The fourth key entity of bookings is the staff member. Now, staff member are the stakeholders who are actually going to provide some kind of service to the customers. They may also be administrators of the calendar. So in our staff member entity, we have various roles like administrator, scheduler, or a team member. So administrator may or may not provide service to a customer, but administrator will manage the entire calendar, will manage the settings, will define the rules of the calendar. So as I said, there is another interesting use case of booking where it need not be a human. There can be a resource mailbox. For example, I used the example of a car, which in an organization people were using to book. So even a resource mailbox can act as a staff member. Now, the most important entity obviously are the appointments. So whenever a customer comes to the booking calendar and creates a booking request, it becomes an appointment object. So basically, the appointment will contain information like who is the staff member who is providing the service, who are the customers, since there can be more than one customers as well, and other details which we can collect from the customers. So I hope it's clear over here. I'll move forward. So what are the key operations and permissions? So for all these entities which are there, business, service, customer, staff member, and appointments, we have the typical CRUD operations. We have the list, get, update, delete, and post APIs for all of them. Apart from this, we have publish and unpublish APIs. Let me explain what that is. For a calendar, you need to publish it to the outside world so that they can come and book an appointment with you. So to publish that, there is the publish API, and you can also unpublish the calendar using the unpublish APIs. The permissions which are available right now are delegated permissions for work and school accounts. We have some other updates coming, which I will speak about it later in the presentation. So typically right now, it will be the admins and the schedulers internally who would be scheduling the appointments. But as I will mention in the later slides, we are also working on application permissions, which will allow anyone to come and create an appointment. All right. So this was a basic introduction of bookings, and I wanted to go into the details because this is the first time I'm presenting this to the community. So let me talk about what is new as well. So one of the key features which is new is custom questions. So custom questions gives you the ability to collect extra information from the customer for an appointment. So typically, when you create an appointment, the customer will enter basic details like the name, phone number, address, and he or she can enter some notes. However, custom questions gives the booking administrator the power to get more information. For example, a healthcare provider might want some kind of insurance details. So they will create a custom question, and now the customer or the patient here will enter the insurance information in that custom fields. Similarly, you can use custom fields for multiple other use cases. Now we have introduced a new API for custom questions altogether, and custom questions becomes one of the entities in addition to the key entities which I spoke about before. The other key feature which we added was SMS support. Now, SMS notification was one of the most requested features for our main bookings product, and recently we introduced it in the APIs as well. This SMS notification feature allows you to send notifications to customers for their appointment. Till now, we were just sending email reminders, email confirmations, and email notifications. Now, along with the email, there's a feature to also allow us to send SMS. Right now, this is only available for US and Canada. However, Europe is on the way. The third feature which we added in the API was online meeting support. So for our appointment object, earlier in booking solutions, it was just an appointment. However, we added the Teams feature so that people can have an online virtual consultation. Now this support is also configurable via the APIs. The fourth key feature which we worked on was group appointments. So let me give you what is a one-on-one appointment and what's a group appointment. In case of a one-on-one appointment, it's typically one customer is being serviced by a staff member. So for example, in the case of a medical appointment, one patient will be there and one doctor will be there. This will be a typical one-on-one scenario. In group appointments, you can have many customers join the same appointment. For example, it can be a webinar or an online class given by an educator, a webinar given by a marketer can be typical use cases. People can also use it when there's an ability to provide service to more than one person in an appointment. For example, a salon, which I used as an example earlier, can provide haircut to 10 people within a window. So there also they can configure a group appointment. So group appointment is another feature which we have added now in the APIs. It was there in our main app before. So the biggest announcement we have currently is that our APIs, which were on beta for about 3 years, are now available on the V1 endpoint, and this got released in December. So all of you request all of you to go and try it out. I have the links to all the documentations in the presentation. There are few things which has changed, and I would like to highlight them as well. So these changes are there for the APIs. Since earlier we were only supporting one-on-one appointment, and now we are supporting group appointments. Hence, we have changed the way customer information is stored in the appointment object. Instead of everything being available at the root level, all the customer information, now it's available as an array within the customer object. So it's not a big change. It's just that everything moves from the root level to an array. This will help people schedule group appointments. There were certain attributes which were there in beta, which were around invoicing, which we no longer support, and we have removed them. We have removed a couple of attributes. These changes are small. For example, the start and end of an end attribute of an appointment have been renamed to start and end time. So I will give the documentation link there and you can check it out. In beta, even the attributes which have been changed are still there, marked as deprecated, but V1, only the new attributes are there. What is upcoming? So we have a lot of plans around the bookings APIs. So one of the most important things which we are building is application permissions. So we are going to be providing application permissions to all the APIs of customer and appointment entities. For business, service, staff member, and custom questions, we'll provide application permissions for the read APIs, typically for the get and the list one. So the goal is to enable self-scheduling scenarios. Another API which is coming is get staff availability API. This will return when the staff members are free. One and the application permission and get staff availability API together will allow the self-scheduling scenarios. The release schedule, beta is planned by the end of March 2022, V1 by the end of June 2022 for application permission and get staff availability. You can reach out to me and the team if you want to be part of an early private preview program. This last slides are all the resources. You can just check out the documentation of V1 and beta. You can check out the new blogs and Microsoft booking documentation in general. Thanks, everyone.
Great information. And there are a lot of questions in the chat regarding SMS and some other things. If you'd like to check those out and respond on there, I think that'd be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Sebastian, who'll be talking more about Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Seb, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Continuing on our couple of other discussions we had around the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, today I want to focus around the Microsoft Graph Toolkit and its agenda and tasks components. My name is Sebastian Levert. I am a senior program manager on the Microsoft Graph Developer Experiences team, and today will be all about MGT, or the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Before we go any further, if you don't know what the toolkit is, the toolkit is a collection of reusable, framework-agnostic components and auth providers that allows you to access and work with the Microsoft Graph. So think about web components that you can drop to any web page that are already bound to the Microsoft Graph. So you don't have to build any of the UI, and you don't even have to build any of the connectivity with Microsoft Graph. They are fully functional, so there's already behaviors in these components. They're fully customizable, and they work with any web framework. So think about React, Angular, Vue.js, or even plain HTML, and they work on all major browsers. Why would you care? Because you're like me. You want to cut on development time and deliver really high value to your business without focusing on the boilerplate code, which I would assume that some of these controls might be for you. They're beautiful, but they're flexible. They are style like M365. But if you want to customize it and bring your own brand in there, you're 100% capable of doing so. And it works everywhere, on the web, in Teams, in any apps you're thinking of that would be web, in Electron, in any scenario. So today, we're going to focus on 3 different components. The first one will be the agenda component. Think about the agenda component being a listing of your current or future events that are in your calendar. So a great way to stay on top of things when you're browsing an app or when you're building a portal. You want to be able to see that, oh, you have an event upcoming. Then we're going to talk a little bit about planner tasks and how we can integrate the toolkit with planner tasks directly and stay on top of your tasks that you have to do in a broader group of people. And finally, we will be talking about To-Do. To-Do being the personal task management system that we have here at Microsoft and how you can really leverage that system to make it pop in your own application. So let me close our slides and let me go right here. Let me open up Visual Studio Code and let me open up this right here. So I have the code that is all written now. We're going to go through some of the code. All that code is available on GitHub. You can have a link to the repo at the end of this session. So we're using the same structure of the app that we've been using for the last couple of weeks. The only difference that we're going to find today is we're going to find some really nice tabs here that will allow you to go from one scenario to the other to be able to cover our 3 different components today. The first one is the agenda. How do you actually make an agenda work? Well, it's as simple as adding MGT agenda to your page. The MGT agenda will automatically go fetch your next events that are in your calendar, will render them automatically as part of the app that you're building, and will require a single permission. In that case, it's going to be calendars.read because it's all about the personal calendar of the user that is connected. So calendars.read allow you to see and read your own calendar. So that's the easiest way of making it happen. You see it on the left where we have a collection of different components here. So we have, for example, our date, the title, we have the name, the location actually of this. And we also have some person component here that brings some of the capabilities that we saw in some other sessions, especially regarding our person card, where you can actually see the whole information about this specific person. So a great way to integrate some of the existing components that we've already built. You see how MGT is kind of a building blocks that we're using even within MGT to build our components. The second scenario that I want to highlight is the fact that MGT supports a custom query. So here you have the ability to specify an event query. In that case, it's me/events. So it means these are my events, and I want Graph to return the events in specific order. In that case, by datetime start, or right at the start of the datetime. That means that they will be ordered for me in the way that I want them to be ordered. So if we go a little bit, and here you can see how 10:30, 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m., like it's not always the same thing. But when we go to the next sample, we're going to have the real first one to be on top and then the rest to be afterwards. So now I'm targeting a very similar endpoint with just an order by, but you could really do whatever you're thinking of as part of the query to graph here. You can really customize it in a really nice way. Let me go to the next scenario here. The next scenario is a really interesting capability we have added to the MGT agenda, which allows you to group by day. So to see like a big title, the date, so you know which date this event is for. So you're going to have a group of events. And also we're going to limit to only the 7 next days. So for the next week, I want to see grouped by day all my events. And that's where you're going to see that nice rendering where I see that Tuesday today I have this. Then on Wednesday I have these. Then on Thursday I have these, and so on and so forth. The next scenario is where you can actually have a maximum of items. So let's say you want to just see, I just want to have the next 2 events to show that in my UI so I can always stay on top of things, but without cluttering my entire app. Well, you can do that by just showing a max of 4, like we're doing in this case. You can also change the time zone. So if you're working with time zones, if you've ever worked with dates, you know how complicated these things can become. In that case, we're making it super easy for you to say, hey, this user is in that time zone. So please do all the formatting, all the translations of dates based on their own time zones, and then you can just set the time zone. The last thing that I wanted to show for the agenda is our custom rendering, which I think is one of the most customized rendering that we're offering as part of our sample gallery, is our events, advanced events templating, where you'll be able to have, you see here how you're saying, I want to have the next 10 days, I want to have a maximum of 7 events being shown in there. I'm going to override the event. So basically, every time we're going to print or render an event on the screen, we're going to replace the HTML that MGT usually renders by this HTML here, where you're going to be able to register some functions as part of your template. Say here, I want to have a day from date, from date time. I want a time range instead of the start time and the end time. I want to be able to, if there's a join Microsoft Teams meeting link in the body preview, well, I want to render that as a link so I can join in all of that. All of these, this sample is available on our playground, so you can have a look at it. But you can see how complex these can become. And when we're browsing here, look at how great this is. It really gives you a timeline view of all the events that are happening around you. So with just a little bit of CSS, a little bit of JavaScript, and MGT, you can really build amazing solutions without the need to go on and build your own stuff. Second component, and I see we have 3 minutes left, so we're going to go fairly quick. I think I'm going to actually just show the top ones for each of them. One of them being Planner. Planner allows you to see all the tasks that you are assigned to in multiple projects. So if I click here on Assign to Me, I will be able to see that I have a product launch event, a logistics project. All of them will have different tasks. If I click on product launch, I will see all of them. I can actually act on them and close them or complete them. You can see it here. I can also add tasks right from here. So it's really not, it's one of the first components we look at that allows you to do some writes back to Microsoft Graph, which I think is an amazing capability that we're offering. Lots of scenarios you can look at here, either through a read-only capability, hiding some capabilities, targeting a specific group ID. So you just want to focus on a specific group ID, and so on and so forth. The last one is the to-do one, where you have your tasks, but also all your different task lists that exist in Microsoft To-Do. So you see here, they are very similar in nature because both of them are managing tasks, but they have their small particularity, especially because there's a little bit less metadata attached to To-Do. So for example, I can go to the reading list. Now I can find all of my books that I want to read this year which would deliver value. I can add a new task right here directly to my reading list, and I can from here delete the task, for instance. Something that I wanted to show before we're ending is our native support for dark mode. So MGT supports dark mode natively. All of our components do support dark mode, so you can always have the ability to turn it into dark mode. And there you go. That's what I wanted to show today. Maybe actually no. You know what? I'm gonna hand it over to Brian, and I'm gonna share the links in the chat. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Seb. Great to be able to see all that great demos and additional information. We did have a couple of questions in the chat related to shared calendars and a couple other areas. If you wouldn't mind responding to those, that'd be great.
I will, absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And with that, we'll wrap up in our final minute on here. If you are interested in other Microsoft 365 developer community calls, we have a number of them out there. This, again, is our Microsoft 365 platform call. We also have ones for adaptive cards for Microsoft Identity, Office Add-ins, Power Apps, M365 Community, and Viva Connections SPFX. You can find all those different links and calendar invites at aka.ms/M365PNP. And as always, all of our recordings are made available within 24 hours on the Microsoft 365 Community YouTube channel. You can find that again at aka.ms/M365PNP/videos. Please feel free to subscribe today. You'll get all the latest announcements and updates for this. Follow along with us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or M365PNP. Our next call will be next Tuesday, February 8th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We look forward to you joining us. Thank you so much for joining in today. Love all the interactions and community involvement. It'd be awesome and amazing, and we'll see you next week.